Thank you very much. Thank you all. Welcome. We have a wonderful group of folks here, and we want to welcome you as well to Threshold of Hope, our chance to bring you the writings of Pope John Paul the Great. And we'll be looking at his document on the priesthood, but first a couple other things. Today is a double feast. It's the feast of St. Bede the Venerable. He was born in England in 672 or 73 and died in 735. This was a time in which all of Europe was being invaded by one wave of barbarians after another. And very few people could read because the barbarians were burning all the books and killing the teachers and destroying the monastery libraries, one after another. But Venerable Bede was the best educated of his era, and he was a good scholar. He wrote, for instance, a history of England, the first one that we have. He wrote commentaries on scripture and on a variety of other topics, using the best he could from the small library he had relative to our libraries. It was very small, but he was really died as a great intellectual leader at a time of a lot of darkness. Also, today is the feast of Pope Gregory VII. He was Pope in the 11th century, and Pope Gregory was born around 1020 and became Pope in 1073. This was not an easy time. In fact, for the 2 centuries prior, the papacy was at the worst it had ever been, or ever would be. And we hear about the papacy being problematic in the Middle Ages, or in the Renaissance, with Alexander VI and Julius II. But they were pikers compared to the popes of the 9th and 10th centuries. So it was a horrible period. And again, they were affected by the barbarian invasions in Italy too, and various crises. But what's amazing is that this crisis was helped to be brought to an end by Pope Gregory VII. He himself was very pious and holy. He was learned, and he really wanted to keep his own life in good order. He didn't really want to be Pope, but people urged him because he was the obvious leader to do so, having helped his predecessors as a theologian. Well, here's where the problem, there are a number of problems. One was a lot of the clergy were going off to get married. And they weren't allowed to in the West, but they're getting married anyway. And then they were trying to take church property as well and run it for their own, to keep, well, it's hard to maintain a family. So there was a lot of financial corruption and sexual corruption. And there were a number of people who were working hard for reform. And at first, the Emperor Henry IV tried to help, but the people that were sinning swayed him to their side. And so the Pope had to excommunicate him. And that's why you see that famous picture of Emperor Henry IV kneeling in the snow for 3 days at Canossa, waiting for the Pope to forgive him, which he did. But the issue was, will the government, the state, control the church? That's what Henry IV was trying to do. Have himself control the church and appoint the bishops as political appointees to manage the property he wanted managed for the empire's sake, or is the Pope the one who chooses the bishops, as had been the case? So this was the crisis. And eventually, Gregory VII got exiled from Italy and died in Salerno, Italy, with his supporters. But it really did begin the process of reform that continued on after him, because there were more saints in other parts of Europe who were also bringing the end of the barbarian invasions and the conversion of the barbarians, and they're becoming Christian and really living out Christian life. So that was a key turning point and the beginning of what would eventually become the medieval Renaissance. All right, now we'll take a look at some of your emails. Remember, you can send emails by writing to threshold@EWTN.com. First one. Hi, Father Mitch. In my weekly Catholic commentator, I read an article by a local priest that was disturbing to me. It read how we as Catholics should be for social justice and how it does not have the same philosophy as communism in this country. He stated that he and both our dioceses are pushing social justice. Am I wrong in thinking this priest is very misguided in what our government is calling social justice? And that's Carmen. Well, first of all, Carmen, it's hard for me to comment because he did not define it. I don't know what he means by social justice. So one of the things that I would suggest to you is to write to the editor of the paper and ask for a clarification and definition. And then when we deal with the government doing this, this is something we have to be alert to, because we're in something of a crisis within government for a long time now. It's not something new. It's been going on for since the 1930s. What role does the federal government have? And what role does the state and the other local governments have? And this is something that is, very important to pay attention to. And secondly, we also have to, there's some things that are just too big for the federal government to do and that the Constitution doesn't permit. And so you have to pay attention to that. Also, you have to define justice being done by the state, whether the local government, state government, or federal. Because what we have are certain rights, and that those rights do not, cannot, and will not come from the state. The government does not give us our rights, and they cannot take them away. That is in our Declaration, and it's implied in the Constitution. Rights are given to us by God directly to each individual, and that's the basis of our equality. Secondly, with rights go responsibilities. That, in fact, where you have responsibilities, you have rights, and we have rights, you have responsibilities. And we have to be careful that folks don't invent rights that are not from God directly, and we have to have these things clearly defined. And then also ask questions of the practical issue. What role does the government have in this? Franklin Delano Roosevelt, for instance, invented a new Bill of Rights, as he called it, back in the 30s. And the new Bill of Rights said, do we have a right to housing? Well, not from the federal government. That's not their role. And this is something that you have to be, and right to a job that you like, a right to a vacation. A right to a vacation is something that is not the federal government's role to do. He thought it was. That's why I say this has been a long-term dispute. We have to really make this clear so that we then, because once you start talking about rights and justice, then you start talking about lawyers getting involved to enforce those rights. And we have to be very cautious about that. I tend to be very cautious, and especially when we have enough problems of the government running things well. This is sometimes, because things are too big. It's hard for such a large organization to be easily managed. Overall, our Constitution wants a lot of things done at the state level. But then the states getting involved in issues that are federal issues is not right either. So we have to keep balance here. So get definitions. Second one, dear Father Mitch, I recently saw a television program about the end times. As regards the position and state of the Catholic Church, certain writings of Jesuit Malachi Martin were quoted as sacred theology. His disparaging views about Vatican conspiracies and complicity with the New World Order were quite alarmist. What is your understanding of Malachi Martin, and just how seriously do you think we should take his findings? Maxine of Florida. Well, first of all, Malachi Martin had been a Jesuit, but he was dismissed from the society back in the 1960s. Think about 1965, 66, and was not readmitted. So was not a Jesuit. He had been at one time, but not at the writing of his books. Secondly, having looked at some of his books, I read the one on the Jesuits, of which I had more knowledge, being a Jesuit myself. And I'd say about a third of it was decent history. A third of it I knew to be false. He just made things up. As a matter of fact, one of them was about my former spiritual director and philosophy professor, about a book he did on Karl Marx and early Marxism. And that was his doctoral area. And Malachi Martin included a quotation from the book. My former spiritual director, Father Art McGovern, said, I'll pay $10,000 to anybody who can find that in my book. It's not there. I didn't write that. I didn't think that. Malachi Martin made it up. Now that was about a book that could be verified. The things that he then goes on to say he can't verify. I don't, he's lost my trust. And there are a lot of other things that I won't go into details, but he certainly manufactured information that I could show was false. And there are too many things I didn't know if they were true or false. So I don't trust his alarmism about the end times either. As I've said once, I've said it 1,000 times. Knowing about the end times, names, dates, and places for the Antichrist, all of that is a management issue, and God is management. I'm in sales and distribution. Also, knowing the end times is not on the final exam. Our Lord said the angels don't even know, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. What is on the exam are the 10 Commandments. That you worry about. Not just knowing them, but living them. God examines us for that. That's for sure. Okay, let's take a look now at this document, Pastores Dabo Vobis, which means I will give you shepherds. And you can get a free electronic copy at our website, which is EWTN.com. Go to the television tab at the website, click television series, and then scroll down to Threshold of Hope. Click there and you'll see the document is linked on the Threshold of Hope links on that page. Put it into your computer, and you can read it from your computer or print it out for whatever you want to pay for paper and ink. So we are on paragraph 76. And this is entitled, again, we're talking in a chapter about continuing education for priests. But as we've been pointing out throughout the chapter, continuing education in the faith is not only for priests, it's for everybody. So there's a lot of this that we can apply to ourselves as well, okay? So let's take a look at this. This section is called at every age and in all conditions of life. That is, priests should get ongoing education no matter how old or young they are and no matter what condition they're in. And that, again, applies to all of us. One of the great things about the faith is that no matter how much you study, there's always more to learn. So, we begin here. Permanent or ongoing formation, precisely because it is permanent, should always be part of a priest's life. Just as our own formation in the faith should always be part of our lives too. We're never too old to not learn. In every phase and condition of his life, and at every level of responsibility he has in the church, the priest is undergoing formation. So this is something that should go on and on. And I was talking to a father today who has a number of children, 8 I think he has. And he's got children at different stages. It's really different to have little babies than it is to have grown children going to college and trying to figure out their careers, and babies. So the babies are relatively easy, a lot of work, but not so complex. Change diapers, food, play, that's pretty good. And college kids are more complex. And as parents, I bring that up because all of you who are parents know you had to keep learning more about those next stages of parenting. And you had to learn from your mothers and fathers about how to change a diaper. But then you get to sit there and let them laugh as you raise teenagers who ended up being just like you were. And they were happy to live long enough to see it. So, but you keep learning as you go. Well, this is true of every part of our faith, too. We have to keep learning more about it. Clearly, then, the possibilities for formation and the different kinds of formation are connected with the variety of ages, conditions of life, and duties one finds among priests and lay people. So there'll be different kind of courses. Some people who did not get much formation over the last 30, 40 years may need to get basic courses on the catechism. Other people may need deeper courses on spirituality and on other points of theology and so on. So that's true for priests and laity. Now, first of all, he starts off, he's going to go with 4 different groups. First group, young priests, where ongoing formation is a duty for young priests. And first of all, he wants them to have frequent and systematic meetings, so that, and especially back in the when I was a young priest, they required us for the first 5 years to report on the articles we were reading, and let our superiors know what we were doing to keep up. But there wasn't anything organized apart from our own word about what we were doing. In one sense, I cheated by going on to get a doctorate, and so I had to do a lot of reading that way. But that was the kind of thing that should also have certain meetings where the young priests get together and have a variety of things as they continue their formation that they received in the seminary. One of the tasks that he wants young priests to do is make sure they grasp and also make their own, make incarnate, live out in concrete daily life the unique wealth of God's gift, which is the priesthood. Again, he's talked throughout this whole exhortation. The priesthood is a gift. None of us deserve it. We may be ordained, but we don't deserve it. And as a result, that the priests need to understand what this gift is and then make it their own, make it real in their lives in very concrete ways. And they also need to learn more about how to express their capabilities and ministerial attitude. It's important to talk about what you did. For instance, we may not talk about the people that we go to, that come to us for confession. I can't say, boy, did you hear Joe, his confession? No. We don't go back to the rectory and talk amongst ourselves. That doesn't happen. That would be really, really, as a matter of fact, that's a sin so serious that it's reserved to the Pope. Only the Pope can absolve a priest of doing that. But we can talk about, in general, some of the things like, what do you do for different penances? How do you deal with certain issues in terms of counseling? There are ways in which you can discuss in a very vague and abstract way some of the kinds of issues that you come across and get help from others about how you handle it. Do you just sort of explode and yell and scream at people? Probably not. But if you do, they might want to talk about this to the other priests and get some help about how to deal with this a little bit better. And also, the priests should talk about amongst themselves having a more convinced and responsible role in the presbyterate. Remember, that word presbyterate comes from the Greek word presbyteros, meaning priest, from which we get the word priest, means elder, but we get the English word priest from that word. And the presbyterate refers to all the priests of a diocese together. See, that means the priests as a group. So you just have one word. Instead of saying the priest group, you say presbyterate. refers to all the priests. And it's a very ancient word. In Greek it's presbyterion, and it appears already as a word in the writings of St. Ignatius of Antioch, who was the patriarch and bishop of Antioch in the 1st century. And he wrote about how important it is for the whole presbyterion, all of the priests of his patriarchate, to be together with the bishop. So that's 107 that he's writing the letters on his way to his death. So having that responsible insertion into the presbyterate, and therefore having more communion and co-responsibility with the other priests. They need to talk about that, because priests are not out there as lone rangers mopping up town by themselves. They're part of a whole diocese, and they cooperate with the other priest and the bishop. And they need to do so. Again, we've been talking a lot about this. You do so in communion with the other priests, not in competition. You do so in co-responsibility, not trying to show off so I get a better parish after this. I want a parish where there are more rich people. No. You do this with a sense, how are you best going to be used to serve God in communion with the other priests? And they're not your competitors, the opposition, or anything like that you have to eliminate. This isn't one of those reality shows where you're on an island trying to eliminate people. So that's a very important element, okay, for the young priests. It goes on about the young priests. Now, he also brings up a real issue. Again, most of us who are ordained or have gone to long periods of school can relate to this, because some priests who have just come out of seminary have a sense of having had enough. I've written enough papers. I'm tired. I don't want to go to school. And that's understandable. School is fun in its way, but it's also not. You're under a certain kind of scrutiny. And, that's, the Pope says it's understandable that a priest would have that mentality when he's finished. And when he's then faced with this idea of going for more study and meetings, the priest might balk. But the Pope is very strong on this. And it should be true for all of us. The idea that priestly formation ends on the day one leaves a seminary is false and dangerous, and needs to be totally rejected. Formation does not end the day you leave seminary. Matter of fact, I love there's an old French proverb that says some problems are so complicated, even the newly ordained priest doesn't have an opinion. And not that his opinion would be right, but he would have an opinion. This is something that's very important. And again, it's not just something that is in the priesthood by any means. I was giving a retreat in the Philadelphia area this past weekend, and I was speaking to a couple of young ladies who are working as directors of religious education in their parishes. And they run across this problem. On one hand, sacramentally, pastorally, it would be better to start confirming children at the age we used to. When I was a kid, we did it when we were about 10 years old, 11 years old. And now they wait to high school. Why? Because once you confirm them, they won't come back to class. And the biggest problem in that comes from the parents. The parents are the ones, well, you already got confirmed, now let's go play soccer. Let's get down to baseball. And that becomes a higher priority. And oftentimes, in some parts of the cities and country, it's not easy for young children to be able to get the catechism on their own anyway. And so this is a task that parents need to see, that their children are not finished in terms of understanding their faith just because they got confirmed. any more than a priest is finished just because he's done with seminary and got the degree and he had hands laid on him. He has a lot more to learn. Your kids have a lot more to learn. And you know what? Maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea for the parents to organize an adult study group going on while the kids are in their catechism so that the parents are learning more than the kids are. That's a good idea. It's always good to be smarter than the kids. Also, young priests who take part in meetings for ongoing formation will be able to help one another by exchanging experiences and reflecting on how to put into practice the ideals of the priesthood and the ministry that they learned about in their seminary years. This is also important because, you have a variety of experiences, and not everybody has the same skills. When you're in a parish, you have to deal with finances. How do you organize various meetings? How do you deal with parish councils and the various parish organizations that exist? And what do you do when you have some that are tough? And what makes them tough? That there are one or two people in a group who either have been in charge for a long time or have been fighting each other to get in charge for a long time. And you walk in as a bright, fresh, young priest who's just filled, oh boy, everybody gets along because this is the church. And you learn how to deal with these people who are troublemakers, and how you learn to, you don't want to kick them out or anything, but what you want to do is redirect the energy. And you learn that from other priests who deal with the same things and what experience they had. And just talking about it also, sometimes, the guys get wounded. They think they can, I'm the priest, you just do what I say. That's what some people think, that once the priest says something, everybody listens. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Ask the camera guys. So, at the same time, their active participation in formational meetings of the presbyterate, because, the presbyterate, that is all the priests of a diocese, do get together for various issues. We've had, for instance, every diocese has been doing formation on the whole crisis of the sexual abuse issues and having all the limits. So we've had to go to lots of those classes. And so that'd be one example, but also on theology. And we'll be having a lot new ones on the new translation of the liturgy, because there's a new translation from the Latin into English. One lady wrote me, said, I don't want Latin. It won't be in Latin. It's going to be in English, but it'll be a new translation. And we have to learn some of the differences, and we'll have to prepare ourselves. So the young priests need to participate in those formal meetings, and that way they can be an example of enthusiasm for learning, also a stimulus to the other priests who are ahead of them in years, the older priests, so that you get them to be excited again too. That's a good thing. So that's a big help to the bishops, when the priests are helping each other to grow in enthusiasm as well as in experience. That's what's going on. They can thus show their love for those who make up the presbyterate. That is, they really should grow in caring for the other priests. And oftentimes they've been, their teachers and heroes. Now they, as fellow priests, are there to help encourage them. And also how much they care for the particular church, that is, for that local diocese. And to keep in mind that the diocese needs priests who are well formed. Need priests who understand canon law, the issues of marriage and counseling and all the rest, liturgy, scripture. And that as they learn to love the rest of the priests and the diocese, they also realize that this is part of the process of becoming a better formed priest, and I want to be the best priest I possibly can be. So that's going to be the goal. All right, I'm going to take a little break. We'll come back in a couple minutes with questions from our studio audience, as well as continuing on with this exhortation. So please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you much, and welcome back. Again, as you can see, we have a really nice group of folks. A lot of them from Baltimore area, Maryland, and New Jersey, Texas, and Canada, and a variety of other places from all around the country. And it's a delight to have you all here. It really is. And we'd love to have you come and join us. Makes it a lot more fun for me. So I like that. And if you can make a pilgrimage here, contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. That's 205-271-2966. Or go to www.ewtn.com. And they'll give you information about where you can stay, scheduling, getting into the shows with tickets and all that, places to eat. How many of you ate over at the Irondale Cafe for fried green tomatoes? Do y'all have fried green tomatoes? Yes. Did you like them? Yes. Yeah, they're good. They're good. I like them too. All right, and then speaking of pilgrimage, there's another place where they do not serve fried green tomatoes, but they have lots of other really good food, namely the Holy Land. I'll be leading a pilgrimage to the Holy Land December 15th to the 26th. God willing, we'll forward your address to Santa because we'll be in Bethlehem for midnight mass. So that'll be God willing. So if you can join us, be there 1-800-554-4556. That's 1-800-554-4556. Or go to the website, my website, for information, www.fathermitchpacwa.org, and Father is spelled out. Okay? All right, let's take some questions here from our audience. We have this one gentleman here. Sir, where are you from?
Dallas.
Dallas, in the great Republic of Texas.
Yes.
Good to have you here. And what is your question?
Well, Father, as a priest, how do you handle a confession that where a third person is involved in even a criminal offense?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
How does a priest handle that personally, living with it?
See, it depends on the crime. For instance, if there's a third person involved who was the victim of the crime, say it's theft, a good example. I insist that the penitent must do restitution. They have to pay it back. That's church law. You can't say, I'm sorry I stole, and I get to keep it. Cool. No. You must give it back. Now, I may not order them to give it back in such a way that they will get caught. They may turn themselves in if they wish, but I can't order them to do that. I can help them, for instance, to pay it back and I've done this, where the person would give me the money. Then what I've done is exchanged it for some other bills at the bank. That way there would be no fingerprints. I must protect the anonymity of the person who went to confession. And then I give it back to the person, and that really is cool. But there are other kind of situations that were not theft. You have the situation of other forms of abuse. And, it depends on, like they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, that you have to look at the different people who you offended by your drinking or whatever other sin you might commit, and then try to make amends so long as the amends does not make it worse for that person. So sometimes it would be worse to bring it up to them. So you have to use discernment and care there. But at the very least, I want them to pray for the person they offended, but also, if they can, do some form of reconciliation or restitution if that's necessary. Because that's very important in terms of the justice. That's where justice does come in. As a good example of dealing with a just way of dealing. Okay? I have another question here. Where are you from, sir?
Leopold, Missouri.
Great, good to have you here. And what's your question?
On Tuesday evening, I normally go to Mass at St. Mary's in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Okay. And Father Jim Sawyer,
he's a nice little town.
He's a retired priest, but he does a Tuesday evening Mass. And he said and I agreed with him 100%, that the reason people don't go to confession is because the priests do not do not tell how important that confession is, and that confession is very necessary, and that the people just do not hear it from the pulpit.
Yeah. And, this is one, in fact, a few years ago, working through this same book, one of the exhortations was on confession. We spent a whole year going over the need for us priests to talk about confession. You're absolutely right. And to be there as well, to be there. I think there are a number of reasons that this may happen. Sometimes there is a psychologization of the faith, that the psychological counseling may be considered more effective than the sacramental absolution. That may be in some people's minds. Also, sometimes priests tell me that, sure, I try to talk about it and I sit in the confessional, but nobody shows up. That can happen too. But for the most part, when priests do talk about confession from the pulpit, and not just say, you sinners, go to confession. No, it has to teach it, explain it, what it's for, and how, the benefits. He has to witness to it himself by going and, give, a testimony from his own experience as a priest and as a penitent. Because we can't go to ourselves, right? I can't say, bless me, for I've sinned. When you went to confession last. No. I have to go to another priest. And this is something very important. So we have to do that, as well as be available to hear the confessions. That's one of the things we do here at the network. Every day, the friars are hearing confessions before the noon mass. Every day. They start about 11 o'clock. And there's always a line. Always a line. And so, and some priests say, only come from mortal sins. You can't say that. You can't. Because then everybody knows that the people in line committed mortal sin. You're breaking, the sealed confession implicitly. Can't do that. And no little sinners, only big ones. Though I did tease once that there was a bishop and 3 of us priests. I said, all of you young sinners go to the new priest. He was newly ordained. All the big sinners go to the bishop. The mean ones come to me, and the ones that don't like the pastor can come to me, and then he'll take care of the rest. But that's just teasing. We have to make sure that we let people know that this is very much an important part of the faith, and that we need it and that we benefit from it. And that's, we learn to take. And then the other side of it too is not only on the priest's fault. I don't want to make it seem like it's always the fault of the priest. It's not. It's also a problem that a lot of people like to think that they're not sinners. They've been watching too much daytime talk shows on other networks. And it's all, again, they do psychologize guilt and sin. And so it's just, I just got to get over my guilt feelings. And some of these TV hosts will emphasize that the worst thing is to feel guilty. Well, that is not the worst thing if you are guilty. If you are guilty, feel it, confess it, and change your life. It's crazy. So that's another part of the problem. We're fighting against the culture. Though I did see a comedy recently where the guy went to confession, and it was really cool because they did give the priest gave him good, solid moral advice that he had to heed. And he did. And even though it was a comedy, they handled it very well. He said, well, can I just, I'll do 60 Hail Marys. No. You have to deal with the issue of the people you offended and lied to. Go back to your question. All right. Let's continue on with paragraph 76 on the need of young priests for continuing formation. That in order to accompany the young priests in this first delicate phase of their life and ministry as priests, it's very opportune and perhaps even absolutely necessary to create a suitable support structure with appropriate guides and teachers. That's something for the bishop to do, or a formation person, that you set up a system so that once every 6 months or 3 months, whatever it is, we're going to meet. And this is we're going to meet. There's going to be a day just to relax, pray, have a nice dinner, maybe a round of golf if they golf. But it's some fun. They need to have that there too. That's why, and that's what the Pope says. They can, in their first years of ministry, they need help to make a good start at keeping balance in their priestly service with these regular meetings. In a community setting if possible, like at a retreat house or something. That'd be a good idea. Or back at the seminary even. So that they'll be assured of having times of rest, prayer, reflection, and fraternal exchange with the other priests. You get a chance just to talk amongst yourselves. So it won't be just the classes you take, but also being able to be with the guys that you spent the years of seminary with and have some time for socializing and talking and helping one another with the different problems, confessing to each other. Because a lot of times that's what goes on in such meetings. It's time to go to confession to other priests. And it will then be easier right from the beginning to have a balanced approach based on the gospel to the priestly life. So that the gospel of Jesus Christ is the criterion for balance. And we look to the gospel for that. And if there's a local individual church that can't do this, then work with another diocese and do it together with another diocese. Some places are too small or too poor, so work with somebody else too, so that you get this done. But the Pope really wants young priests to get that ongoing formation. Then in paragraph 77, he deals with the other groups. He said that ongoing formation is also a duty for priests of middle age. Uh-oh. I still consider myself middle age, and I'm going to stay middle age until I'm 70. And when I turn 70, I'll renegotiate. So we'll see how the next 10 years go. But they can face a number of risks precisely because of their age. One of the great things, I disagree with most of Sigmund Freud's philosophy of psychology and philosophy of human being, but he did point out something important, namely, kids go through different stages. I don't think he delineated all the stages really well, and psychology over the last century has really done a lot of work to improve and develop. But we do go through stages as children. But then we've also learned that as adults we go through stages too. We don't stop going through stages of life. And there are certain crises that take place, crises of growth or not, at different stages of life. And we need to pay attention to those stages all the way through the time of death. So that's why there's the risk because of the age of middle age. They can have an exaggerated activism. They just keep running around doing so many things, they don't ever take time for their own personal prayer and reflection, and become superficial as a result. You can be highly busy, but without prayer to ground you again, you become just a guy who does everything, Mr. Fix-It, and not have any depth. So that's one thing. And or another problem is they can get into a certain routine approach to exercising the ministry. All right, time to get up, say Mass again, got to give another homily, got to go hear some confessions, got to go see the sick, got to constantly. Well, you don't want it to be getting into a rut. And that happens in marriage. Sometimes people get accustomed to just their jobs and their marriage and they get into a rut. And that's not good for a marriage. You want to get outside of that rut and outside of that routine and mix it up a little bit. As a result of focusing on routine or just activism, a priest can be tempted to presume he can manage everything on his own. I can run it myself. And again, That applies to anybody in other stages or other ministries and ways of life as well. Or that it's his own personal experience, which he thinks is so trustworthy. I have so much experience, I've been around already, I know everything, that I don't need contact with anybody or anything else. That's not a healthy situation. Same thing in marriage too. You know, that you don't know everything about marriage. Even if you're married 50 years, at times there's still surprises, and that's usually a good thing. Why did you not ever tell me that you like to do this? You know, that can go on at different stages. And so you want to have that sense of openness to what's going to be legitimately new. Okay? Often enough, the older priest has a sort of interior fatigue that's dangerous. I mean, we get more tired physically. That's exterior fatigue. That's just part of the aging process. And that's something to note. And I certainly know I need more naps than I used to. I didn't need to get naps before, now I do. But there's an interior fatigue where you just, I'm just tired of the whole thing. You know, why am I doing that? That kind of question goes on. And a cynicism about the people aren't even trying, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a problem. A friend of mine gave me a note from his grandmother's album in her old photo album after she died, and there was a note in there about these two ladies that were mending their husband's trousers. And as they're mending the trousers, one was saying, "Oh, my husband wants to leave the church. He's just sick and tired of it. And he didn't do anything. He doesn't find anything going on for him. Nothing it relates to him." And the other lady said, "You know, that's funny because my husband loves it now. He's more enthusiastic and more involved than he ever has been." And then when they looked, the first lady was repairing the seat of the trousers. The other one was repairing the knees. So it can be a sign of a resigned disillusionment in the face of difficulties and failures. Where, you know, and again, you start off, any vocation, marriage, you start off, oh boy, well, ladies will do this. I can fix this guy. I'll straighten him up and he'll be so cool. And the guy will think, oh boy, I've got my wife and now all my problems are solved because she'll do all this stuff for me. You know, and then when it doesn't work out, it can be disillusionment because life isn't quite that way. And the same thing with the priesthood. It's not all the movie going my way. You know, a lot of times it's the priest who has to set up the chairs and sweep the parish hall and lots of other, fix the light bulbs in the church, and a variety of other things. You know, that's part of life difficulties and sometimes failures where you really can mess up. You know, and sometimes with a marriage that you're counseling and they get a divorce because of what you said. That wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good. That'd be, and it probably isn't because of what the guy said, but it's easy to blame yourself. You know, so these situations need ongoing formation and a continued balanced checking of oneself and one's activity by the part of the role of ongoing formation for older priests is to check on themselves, looking for the motivation and the aids that will help them carry on their mission so that they are more involved. And that, as a result, the priest will maintain a vigilant spirit, always watching for different problems that he's having or causing, and always facing the perennial demands. Some demands show up like you've got to pay for the school, you got to heat the church. These are perennial, but there's also new elements of any one of those things that come along. Like in our present economy, you know, these are new challenges to maintain things. So you have to deal with the new demands, but it's not just of the physical plant, but the new demands of salvation, because the culture is in constant flux. It's not so stable as it once had been. And so we have to be alert to all the issues that people bring to him as a man of God. And that's what his task is. Then he goes on to talk about the priests who are elderly, 70 and older, sometimes older than that. Because you do experience a change in your 70s, mid-70s in particular. Even healthy, strong people begin to see the body weakening, and that makes, and more illnesses come along. And sometimes in some churches, the older priests are the majority. So in those places, the presbyterate, all the priests, first of all, need to show them gratitude. We're standing on their shoulders. Show them respect and show them gratitude for the faithful service on behalf of Jesus Christ and his church. And also give them practical solidarity to help them in their condition. And, like helping them with, are they getting enough food? Are they getting their meals regularly? There's somebody there to help make sure the house gets clean, because they sometimes don't even see things well. That happens with age, and especially if the priest is living on his own. So these are some practical things. And I've had older men when I was a superior, I had some older men in the community. I having to deal with paying attention to their health issues. Like when one guy got macular degeneration, I said, "Give me the keys. You can't drive anymore." I said, "But I see fine, not the side." I said, "Yeah, when the car starts going sideways, you can drive again. Give me the keys as long as it's going forward." But also give them support to say, "Now look, that doesn't mean you stop your work. We'll pay for a cab for you to go anywhere you need to go in the city." Because he was a great counselor. He just couldn't drive there anymore. It was too dangerous for him, and he wouldn't care if he got hurt, but if he hurt somebody else, it would devastate him. So you got to take care of that. And it's not going to be so much a matter of study and updating, but ongoing formation for the elderly priests will be a calm, reassuring confirmation of the part that they still have to play in the presbyterate. We still look to them to give us wisdom and says, "Oh, we already tried that." And they let us know about our brand new ideas are not so new. And also that they still can have some pastoral ministry. It won't be the same as it was, but they are still effective teachers and trainers of other priests. It's another part of their role, to train us younger guys, or the guys who really are younger. Then also to take care of the priests who, because of the burden of their work or illness, are physically weak or moral fatigue, or have cancer and other heart disease and other serious disorders. They can be helped by an ongoing formation that encourages them to keep their service in the church going. They're not dead. And in fact, for Jesuits, if they are in a place where they need nursing care, a nursing care facility for them, we say that their job is orat pro ecclesiam et societatem. They praise for the church and the society of Jesus. That's their task. And we don't want them isolated from the rest of the priests or from the church or the community. They may reduce their activities and contacts, but keep up their own motivation and their priestly joy. That's really it's cool. A lot of guys love going to visit the men in that nursing care situation, and help them keep alive their own conviction that they are active in the church by their prayer. They build up the church especially by their suffering with Christ and with other suffering people. And he cites here from Colossians 1:24, like St. Paul said, "I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake. And in my flesh, I complete what is lacking in Christ's afflictions for the sake of his body, the church." And that they make of themselves an offering for the rest of us. Well, may God bless all of you and keep you, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.